how not to start a side hustle on AWS. If you don't know me, next. If you don't know me, I'm Rehan van der Merwe. I'm an AWS community hero. I'm a certified blogger, AWS certified, and I blog. I speak, and I'm also a meetup organizer. I organize meetups like this, and I'm a bit of a coffee addict as well. You can find me on Twitter or there at my blog, and I'm always just lurking in any AWS channel on any Slack. If there's a AWS channel on that Slack, I'm like usually there. I'm working at Swipe Interactive as a technical head of innovation, and that's about me. For tonight, just to give you a heads up of what we're going to be talking about, I'm going to first discuss a bit about the background of WarpURL, and that's like my first side hustle that I attempted. And we'll be speaking about some points on how not to start a side hustle, including not losing sight of your goals, not validating your product, to DIY everything instead of buying. We'll look at marketing and focus on payment, especially we'll look at if you want to bill in USD and how do you get that money into your bank account. We'll talk about doing things that don't scale. Then we'll get into some of the technical stuff, and I'll show you how I actually built WarpURL on AWS. There's some CDK code and a bit of pseudocode and DynamoDB stuff there. And that's it really. So without further ado, what is WarpURL? So it is a URL shortening service that I created, but I created the world's fastest URL shortening service. And I was very excited, like when I could see that I could do it much faster than anyone else. And like that was my tagline, but I never really validated this at all. And I didn't have anyone in my network that is really a marketer or anything like that. But I went all out with this thing, right? So I did, I connected it with Facebook, with FNB through PayPal to get paid, and then there was invoices that was being generated, and I catered for the enterprise almost before I even had a customer, and that was one of the very big mistakes that I made. But as we go along, I would share more of these. But yes, so let's look at some of them. And one of the first things I want to highlight is that you must really identify your goals when you start out doing this. Remember, this section is how not to start a side hustle on AWS. So you should not lose sight of your goals. And what do I mean by that? So before you start, you have to identify why are you doing this? Are you doing it for the money? Do you want to maybe grow this into a business, or do you want to even sell this later on? Is it just to have fun or to learn some new skills? So for me, it was mainly to learn some new skills. But if you are in it for the money, right, you probably won't have all of these. You can't have all of them, because if you are in it for the money, you would usually do, or you should do, the first and the best thing to get you to your goal, and that isn't always from an architectural or development point of view the best thing. You should maybe just take a WordPress and the template instead of coding this thing yourself. So you probably not have lots of fun doing that, and you probably won't learn new skills. It's not to say that you can't or that you won't, but it's usually just a balance there. So if you are out for it to learn some new skills, you probably will have some fun, and maybe you make some money along the way. And that was what I set out to do with WarpURL. I just wanted the challenge of seeing what skills are needed to do this, and can I even do this? So it was mainly just a challenge, and maybe I get some money, but I knew that was just, I don't know, that wasn't going to realize, but I went for it anyway. I also want to highlight that you must be mindful, right? So life happens, and if you are going to rush this, you just aren't going to have fun at all. And it's going to be a pain doing this thing because it's going to feel like work. Sure, it's going to be work if you are in it for the money, but you should still have fun. I mean, if you are side hustling, it means that you are doing this after your normal day job and going from one job to another. That's just not going to be fun, and you probably won't be able to sustain that for very long. And you must overestimate everything when it comes to your goals and your milestones by at least 50%, in my honest opinion, just because, like I said, life happens and you need to enjoy the journey as well, before getting to that destination. So a very important point and part of successful side hustle is to validate your product. And actually, yeah, about the memes, right? So I threw some memes in here that I found online, and that first one actually didn't even have a space, but then I had the meme, so I just had to throw that in there as well. But there's some memes everywhere, so keep a lookout for them. So your target audience, you must have a target audience in mind before you start the side hustle. It's very important because you can't cater for everyone. And this is probably true for every product. So you have to limit your scope of vision and then only create features for that, because you are just one person and you really can't do everything. So make sure that you identify that early on. It's great if the field that you are going in, you have some skin in the game. Like for me, I just didn't have really anybody in my network that was using URL shortness a lot and was in the marketing space. So for me, when people started to like my content that I put out there about WarpURL, I was very excited. But I kind of fell into this thing that they call the mom test. And if you haven't heard about it, it just says that that you shouldn't ask your mom whether your business is a good idea, because she loves you and will lie to you. So instead of asking if they like it, like I say, you must also ask people if they are willing to pay for it. And then there's going to be much less people following you, most probably. So yeah, with the mom test, I kind of fell into that trap as well, because you do get excited when people like your content, but they are only liking it because they want to support you and might not support the product. So there's this concept of building your marketing or your landing page even before you do the product. So you gather these emails and then you establish if there is an audience for this product. But basically, another way that you can validate if there's audience for this product is just to watch what other people are doing. I mean, if there is a similar product out there, it means that market is basically validated. People are interested in that, so that's a good thing. But now you are competing with all of them. So it's nice to have something original, and that's what I try to do with WarpURL, the fastest, but turns out nobody really cares about the speed. So I also want to say that we have this inner fear of someone stealing our ideas, but ideas are worth nothing unless executed, right? So I can have the same idea as Bill Gates, for example, but I'm probably not going to be able to pull it off. So you have to wear many hats, and you have to choose when you need to build versus buy. The first and almost only question that I use most of the time is this feature part of my core offering? And if the answer is yes, if this makes my product unique, then it's probably worth DIYing. But if it's not, it's probably worth buying, because it isn't going to add that unique selling feature to your product. So investing the time into building that, it's probably not worth it. It's better off buying it. It's more complicated than that, of course. The decision will be different for everyone and will be influenced by how much time and money you have. So yeah, I just also want to highlight that you must look at your own skill set. So you would have to have skills like designing, you would have to be able to work on the back end, the front end, know how to deploy your code. Your front end needs to be SEO friendly. you need to track your analytics. You have to have a documentation site. You have to have a marketing plan and a blog for like long-term SEO benefits. And then you have to support this as well and monitor it. Like for me, all those skills I had to learn doing WarpURL. But there's certain stuff that I still wasn't good at. So I used, for example, this logo generator from Namecheap and this free policy and terms and conditions generator as well, and Photoshop Express. So you don't have to pay for everything here. I try to keep and just use free tools because there's lots of nice things out there actually that you can use to like fill in these gaps where you miss that skill. I could have actually just used a WordPress template or like a Webflow type of thing for my marketing site that you saw, but I wanted to kill two birds with one stone because I wanted to learn how to create a service-side generated site, an SSG site, if you've ever heard the term. And I wanted to do that because I wanted to upgrade my blog as well. So it was like worth my while to actually learn that and take the time, even though I knew it was going to take me twice as long to get this out of the door, right? And something that I also want to mention is that don't even start looking at privacy policies and terms and conditions and getting lawyers involved before you have a paying customer. I mean, that's just not very smart. At least I didn't do that, but I'm just highlighting get customers, right? Get some users, and then if you see that there's a need for this, that it really needs to happen, then you do it, because most of the time you ain't gonna need it. I just want to reiterate, if you want to DIY everything, you're going to need a like very wide skill set. So designs, architecture, SEO, database. Actually, most of this in the previous slide. Each one of these components on its own requires a lot of attention, and you can't focus only on one. So learning all of these while you're building, it's going to take a long time. If you do go the DIY route, like I basically did, be careful of adding a million features because you alone would have to maintain that. And that's something that I fell into. So I had lots of code here at the end. I think it's also because I used pure JavaScript back then. And I just added a lot of features, like instead of doing marketing, because it was very discouraging at some point, then you would just add this new feature and then think that this new feature will make everyone come. But that's just not true. Not true at all. So speaking about marketing, I can't stress enough how important this is. So I don't have any points on the slide to emphasize how little developers actually like marketing. But I'm just joking because like we really have to do this. So like when it comes to marketing, I like already mentioned that strategy of creating a website before the product to gauge if there's an audience for this product. And it's just a very nice way to get interest into this product while you're building it. So there's this concept called building in public. And like what it means is that while you're building it, you're telling public you are building it and then how it's going. It's actually quite different for everyone, but you basically make yourself accountable by telling the public everything that you are doing. And that's like sharing your profits, your revenues, and your future list, like did you actually achieve your goals that you set out to do in the previous months, and then you share on social media like failures and successes. And that's kind of the idea behind building in public, but it's like really not for everyone. I tried it and I did like it, but it's still scary to put out there everything that you have because people share revenue and stuff, and you don't have to. But that's kind of what the build in public trend is about, if you haven't heard it yet. So I just also want to mention that like social media in the beginning is much more powerful than ads, but your own network can only go that far. So like sharing stuff on Twitter and LinkedIn, that's usually where you want to be. Twitter is actually very, very strong for like technical content, like apps and things. And outside of that, like Reddit is always great, and I can use as well. Like, but Reddit is very toxic sometimes. So it's either gonna go very well or very bad. I've seen some people delete some posts after they actually posted there about their product. And don't even think about going to product hunt before you have some users and quite a few users and people actively using it and interacting with that product. So this is also like one of the mistakes that I made. Like I only created the landing page after I created the product, and to start marketing then it's almost too late. So you have this product and then you go on to this full marketing drive. And I had to, at some point, because the stuff that I was using on social media, like it didn't get any signups, like people were liking it and they were interacting with that content, but no one really signed up. And it makes sense because the people in my network are AWS and developers and some CEOs and things, but there isn't anybody that's a big marketing audience in my own network. And so I did get a few, but it didn't really pan out to be anything. So I even tried to do cold emails and like reaching out to people on LinkedIn, but it was just terrible. Like I just felt terrible whenever I closed the laptop and went to bed. It just isn't my personality type, and it might be for some people, but really just isn't for me. Let's talk about getting paid. So like I mentioned, I specifically want to highlight how to get paid in USD. It is actually much cheaper for you if you can invoice in ZAR, because then there's no currency conversions, there's fewer intermediate parties, and all of this leads to just a smaller transactional fee. They also most likely handle all the tax and stuff that's involved with the transaction. And here we have quite a few options. We have PayStack and PayFast and like Beach Payment, and there's quite a few others as well. So there's lots of people in this space. But when you want to invoice in USD, it's much more difficult because, well, it's not more difficult. You're just going to get a lot less out of it because it's going to be higher currency conversions. There's more intermediate parties involved and also higher transaction fees. So they also usually don't handle tax. And what I did is I used the PayPal to FNB integration. It's the only way you can get money out of PayPal is with this PayPal FNB integration, or at least to my knowledge. And even getting this up, it was quite a hassle. It took like quite a few weeks and months because this integration between these two are like really old and using like all of these legacy parts of both of these systems, or that's what it feels like. And back then, like when I'm saying back then, I mean like about last year, right? So I set up this smoke test for my own payment. So I was the first subscriber to my own product, and it would take, I think I just did like $100 out of my own pocket, and then it goes to the whole system. And that amount of percentage that I lost, taking my ZAR into USD, so into PayPal, and then from PayPal into FNB. So it was going from USD ZAR and then from USD back to ZAR. And then, so that currency conversion like took a few percentages, and also then PayPal and like FNB also took a few percentages. So I think at the end, I lost like 12 to 16% of that money going all the way like from my personal bank account into my business bank account. And that's also something that I want to highlight is get a business bank account, because if this is successful, all of those small invoices and stuff, you need to keep your money separate from your personal savings and personal bank account. Even if you don't open business, just get a different bank account. Okay, but you actually do need a registered business to open a bank account, business bank account. But if you are really looking into it being serious, just go that route. And next, I want to discuss about what's a PSP and the MLR. So PSP stands for Payment Service Provider, and we've actually covered this in the previous slide. So they only do the transaction, and then the fee is much lower. So they don't handle anything like tax, and then they leave things like invoicing up to you, where you have to kind of do the tax for the country for whom you're invoicing, and it actually just gets very complicated. So I didn't even cater for this in my product. I used PayPal there, like I said, but Stripe is also one of them. So Stripe has a very low transaction fee. It's like 2.9 cents. Then a merchant of record, they handle almost everything, but the fee is usually much higher. So they would handle tax for the country, the invoices, like usually that's included within the price. And here we have a few options, like Gumroad. If you've heard of them, you've probably interacted with Gumroad at some point. We have Paddle and Lemon Squeezy, but for Gumroad, like they only buy out every, I'm not sure what it was, like every week. And then that money goes into your PayPal account. And then from the PayPal account, it goes to FNB. So there's all these other transaction fees above what, again, Gumroad is saying here. So there in the top right, we can see that, for example, if you make over $1,000, then the transaction fees on Gumroad is 7%, but that doesn't include the transaction fees between that PayPal takes and that FNB takes. So there's even more transaction fees, hidden transaction fees involved of getting that into your bank account. But with Paddle and Lemon Squeezy, that's actually new now. You can get that money out through Wise or through TransferWise, as they were formerly known. So what they do is they do a direct bank transfer into your bank account, but they can't provide any like any service like PayPal or Stripe does. They just do bank transfers, but that's the option that has the least amount of transaction fees. So using something like Paddle, and then you probably add 1 or 2% more for that Wise type of integration, but there everything is much more clear and known. You don't get any surprises. Something that I also want to talk about is, and this is the last slide before we get to some of the technical stuff, is doing things that don't scale. And this is what I did not do. So I catered for that enterprise in the very first version of my product, and I really shouldn't have. Because every time that you subscribe and you like register and that first invoice goes off, then we spin up a CloudFormation stack for you. So every client got their own CloudFormation stack, which has their own DynamoDB databases, Lambda functions, CloudFront, like their own certificate that needed to be validated. And that just really wasn't a very smart decision. Like looking back, like the default should have been this shared tenancy model, where if you sign up, you fall into this pool, and on a database level, there's some security and things applied so that you can only see your own data and not interact with it with any others. So just like a multi-tenant system. And that's about it, about that kind of journey. So before we get into the technical stuff, I wondered if there's any questions. We are going to do the Q&A at the end, but if anybody has a burning question, now's the time to ask. No one.
I have a question. Thanks.
Yep.
Rehan, you mentioned build things that don't scale. What do you mean by that?
So I catered for that enterprise. Like I've with my design, I also used DynamoDB single table design, and that just got very complicated very quickly. And I should have just gone there for a normal relational database, something like Postgres or MySQL. Just move fast to get where you want to go. See if you get users, and if you actually hit a scaling problem, then it means you probably did something right. And you probably are getting money at that point where you can then take the time to go and change that. And if you do what I did this premature optimization, and it just really wasn't necessary.
Thank you so much. Makes perfect sense.
Rehan?
Yes.
Can you please elaborate more on the mom test? Because I kind of like didn't follow up on that.
So what the mom test says is that you shouldn't ask your mom if she likes your product, because she will always say yes. So it goes to saying that if you ask the people in your network, they would probably like to see you succeed. So like for me with this WarpURL, like people were seeing what I was doing, and that I was putting it out on like onto my own social network. And because people like me and they would like me to succeed, then they would like it and thumbs up and maybe even like reshare it, but they wouldn't actually use the product. Like they wouldn't buy and be a user of this product. So even though they like it, it gives you like this false sense of like there is an audience for my product, but there isn't an audience for your product. The people in your network aren't going to buy and use it. They are just liking it to support you. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, thanks. I really like that.
There's actually, I think, a whole book on that, if I'm not mistaken. Any more questions, or continue? Everyone's voice. Okay. So this is part of what I built. I'm not sure if everybody saw the marketing site, but it was something like this. So it takes this long URL. Let's take it up. It's actually not very long, right? But you can then paste it in there, and people just make it short. So this was just the very quick demo. But then here it says everything that it is, what it's going to do. I even built in this very, very nice URL shortener comparison thing. So this is then the shorter link. It's actually longer now than the short link.
Sorry,
then
Ria.
it opens GitHub. Yeah.
I just want to confirm that we're on the correct screen.
You are not.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. Just click on the bit. Oh man, that was embarrassing. So this is the WarpURL marketing or landing page that I did every year. And yeah, I just went all out with it this as well. But this was a very nice experience because I'm not a designer. And I learned quite a lot about how to make something that looks reasonably appealing. Like I went all out with this URL shortener latency comparison thing. Is like I thought this was going to be my what do they call it, like the golden glove or whatever. Like this was going to be my selling point to show that it is actually faster than everything else out there, because I compared mine and then also all of the others. But you ping it now, like you ping it from everywhere in the world. So I'll show you now like how I did that, is that I deploy a Lambda function into every region of AWS, and then I ping a URL and see how long that takes. I then store that time into database, and then I show it on all these graphs. So here I have like all of these providers: Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Bitly, like Rebrandly, like all of these. I thought it would be a very good comparison to show that I'm actually, AWS was having some problems over there, most likely. And then I thought this was going to be my selling point, right? But it just wasn't in the end. So you can even check this out, click on demo, and then see how it works. I'm going to open up now. But this is then what is deployed. But as soon as you register, you are on here, and what it looks like, let's click on this one. After you filled in everything, it tells you that this is deployed. There's even I catered for backend API, the subscription type. You have to put in your own DNS records because everyone gets their own CloudFront so that they get their own shortened domain. Again, I shouldn't have done that. I should have just given a standard domain. And if you are enterprise, if you want your own domain, then you can upgrade. But yeah, I didn't do that. So once you do the subscription and you say buy or build whatever, then it will deploy this for you. And this is now that demo WarpURL.net. So this is that subscription that we saw there just now on that other page. And this is the thing that I built. You land on this dashboard, you see the top 5 links, campaigns, the amount of clicks per day, and it's constant like this because of that pinging thing that I just showed you now. And it shows you locations from where all of these clicks are coming from. You can drill down on this, see which cities is it coming from. The operating systems, devices, browsers, all kinds of things. I see somebody shortened the link. There's your link. And under links, this is just how you would create it here. So if I take this GitHub, for example, again, I would just paste it in there and it even automatically opens that up for me. It goes and fetches the head of the HTML document. You can click on it, you can add tags, panes. There's an infinity scroll. Man, that took me really, really long. UTM tracking parameters. You can even track through IP and user agent. And then you can see the stats for this. So if we click on, let's maybe click on this, and there's a similar dashboard there that we have. But yeah, then it's I also could have imports, users, and accounts, everything. So just to give you a bit of background of what was actually built, because I want to move on to this screen. So about how it was actually built. And this is what that regional, I'm calling it the regional pinger. And in every region of AWS, there's this cron and the Lambda function that just pings all of these URLs of different providers, and then it just saves that data back into DynamoDB. Up top here, it's just the CloudFront and the certificate. But if we go down, there's API Lambda function, there's main tables, there's Cognito was used as the authentication. These are some Lambda functions to do those Cognito triggers, because Cognito, I can't say that word. I'm not a fan of Cognito anymore, but we use Cognito. And here's API callbacks from PayPal. And I had this step function, right? So every time that you subscribe, then you have to enter your domain. But we have to validate that you own that domain for CloudFront, because we need to attach that certificate, because we are going to actually create a certificate for that domain of yours in our AWS account, but you need to then verify that you own it. So that's what this step function does. As soon as that create certificate Lambda ran, it's going to create a certificate, and then it needs to do this check that is this certificate valid. If it's not valid, then wait a minute, try again, check again, and I think this check and loop went on for like 1 day or something. And then if it's successful, it means that that certificate's valid, so I can now use it to do a CloudFront deploy, and then it kicks off a code build. And that code build passes all that parameters that you entered when you registered, and they will be used as inputs to your CDK or to your CloudFormation template And this will then generate your own CloudFront, DynamoDBs, and Lambdas, everything. So everybody add their own physical resources within AWS. Again, catering for that extreme enterprise case when it wasn't needed. There's also some build notifications that send data back to this more main section for when it was built or when it failed, so that we could update that on that other dashboard. Do I have any questions over there about the architecture?
There's some questions for you, but not about architecture. If you'd like to check in the chat, or I can read it for you.
I think, let's maybe see. I do have it here. Do you calculate the conversion rate? Yeah, I did. I'll speak a bit about that later on, but I'll show you what I did there. How long did it take you to build all these features? Honestly, a year and a half at least. Yeah, there was like constantly scope creep, but I did that to myself, you know. So it just took way too long. Way too long is the answer. The analytics look really cool. Did you build your own? Use some existing product. I used plotly.js there to do that. Please share any links for another meeting. Okay. I see there's a raised hand. Soletio.
How's it, Rehan? I've heard a lot about, well, I've read in a lot of places about the use of step functions. In your use case, is it basically a way to structure or organize things, or is it like what's the difference between just like custom coding, whatever it is that you're doing?
So what I could have done is I could have started an EC2, for example, just like a server, and then have this infinite loop that said, is this client certificate valid? If it's not, then wait a minute and check again. So I could have had this infinite loop on a server, but I chose not to. And you could easily do this with a step function. You can start the step function and then say on step 1, is the certificate valid? If not, wait 1 minute and then try again. So you could do this process with step functions, and you could orchestrate a lot of logic with it. And this is more of the serverless way of doing things that you can also do on a server in a very stateful manner. But this step functions is just a different type of way to tackle the same problem, but it's very popular in the serverless type of world. Like I used it now, it's quite a good use case where you can wait for something for a certain amount of time and try again. Does that make sense?
Yes, makes perfect sense. Thanks so much.
Okay. Did you consider setting up an AGA in front of CloudFront to take advantage of any cost IPA? I did not. I don't even actually know what the AGA is, or maybe I do, but I don't know the acronym. So maybe if you do want to unmute yourself, maybe you can tell a bit more about what that is. But yeah, for me, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's Amazon Gateway Accelerator.
The Global Accelerator. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Global Accelerator. Basically allows you that what CloudFront does from an IP perspective, instead of, you get this PNI interface from the AWS CloudFront racks to the ISP or the physically as close as possible to the ISP the user is using, and you can purchase like elastic IP, but it's not necessarily region dependent. It means that this IP is global across the entire world, and it's broadcasted through BGP, and it's one way to reduce DNS latency on DNS, and also to have an IP that works across all the VPCs or regions.
I did consider it, but then like that would work perfectly if I did that multi-tenancy option, but I can't give everybody their own IP and their own global accelerator when they sign up. That would have just been way too expensive. But
No,
I haven't used global accelerator, so I'm not sure if that
you can go
is
cross
correct.
account, I think.
Yeah, but can you have multiple certificates attached to it? And that's the problem. That's why I had to use CloudFront. It's the certificates that was the problem. You can't have one certificate that have all of your people's domains in them.
Exactly, yeah. But I think AWS also increased the certificates on the ACM on the ALB. So I think you can get now 500 or something. I think.
Okay, I don't know if it goes up to that. I think I need about 100. And I think you can push CloudFront to 100 as well. But you can't go past a certain amount.
Yeah.
So I designed this thing to work across accounts from the beginning. Again, also a mistake.
Yeah. What about OCSP stapling? Do you ever notice any latency there?
I can't say that I have or know a lot about that.
Okay. Yeah. So in short, basically, it's where the browser needs to download a list of certs that it needs to check, saying, you know, when things get revoked and stuff like this. And it's a way for the certificate authority to say to the browser, you know, yes, here's some fingerprints, you know, you can trust these certificates or the certificate root chain. And I noticed a large difference in performance based on CloudFront versus ACM ALB. And then we were using the AGA to try and reduce that latency on the OCSP. So when you do a trace or a curl request and do a dump, we would see often a few 20 to 60 or 120 milliseconds lost. Yeah.
And was it worth it then in the end? The global accelerator have lots of difference.
Yeah. So I mean, at least in Europe, you know, internet providers peer both privately and through public peering points, INXs. So we knew that we would gain a significant amount of reduced latency, and the AGA in combination with the ALB, you know, we won some like 20, 30 milliseconds. But when I tried it with CloudFront, but that solution wasn't built in CloudFront, I noticed massive improvement, you know. And I want to, you know, when we talk to that project again, I want to try CloudFront and AGA together. So that's why I'm asking the question.
Okay, some very interesting insights. Thanks.
Okay.
I see Ashley said that Global Accelerator was actually slower for them in SA than the standard NLB. Okay, interesting.
Yes.
Marshall, one more question, and then I'm going to move on, unfortunately, and then we can keep the rest till the end. So you can ask Marshall.
Thanks, Rehan. My question is that extremely complicated Lambda architecture. Would you say did it save you costs at the end of the day? Versus maybe the same setup on, you know, one server or something. Besides being in vogue, what would you say was the main reason to use this whole Lambda serverless?
I'm just a serverless guy these days. I can probably spin something up on ECS and containers, but if you know more of containers and just creating apps there, if you can, like, if that can get you to market faster, then I would say go with it. But for me, like, the answer to get to market faster and be more reliable and all of that stuff was AWS Lambda, because I'm working with that in my day job. So it's also like two birds with one stone, because everything that I learn in my private time, I can apply it to my job as well. And that's something as well that just upskills you much faster than just doing that normal day job.
Cool, thanks.
Okay. I think let's quickly continue. I see time is running shorter. And what I wanted to quickly show is that with the AWS CDK, like, I had this array on the left of all the AWS regions. And then I had this for loop where I create this regional pinger stack. It was that one that I showed you in that diagram. And what's in this regional Springer stack is this Lambda function. And then you just specify the path of the code, how long it should run, and all kinds of other environment variables that you need to pass to it. And then but down you say that I give permission to put to do the put action. Where is it? Effect. I even said effect allow all. You can see this as a side project, but don't do that in production. You should have said like put action only, and then I do say the actions, but I'm allowing it on effect allow. No, this is fine. This is fine. Sorry, I'm confused. Only on this table, and then you say ping this every 10 minutes, and this is what this is. It's an event reach rule, and there's the cron output every 30 minutes on this screenshot, and then it will fire this Lambda function. So this piece of code, this Lambda and cron, it will be created for it will be created in every AWS region with the CDK. I thought it was very nifty. I mean, this like really gave me, or like it felt like I had superpowers doing this, to just write this bit of code with a for loop, and it deploys everywhere into AWS. And that's like really neat. So the DynamoDB table design that I used, I mentioned that it's a single table design, and it looks something like this in the end. I'm using I use the Nosql Workbench from AWS. If you haven't used that program, I encourage you to go look at it. It looks something like this. So with this single table design, I had lots of facets like the user, the account, the subscription, billings, subscription plan. So all of these things was in this single table DynamoDB design. And it wasn't actually too bad because it's actually a very big use case for DynamoDB like this. But I should not have used DynamoDB for the actual product because it was very analytical, and you had to do lots of lookups and queries and things. So a different database in hindsight would have been much better there. Something that it was and is relational on scales. But again, I catered for millions of clicks, right? Which I just didn't do. So this was the architecture that is behind the actual shortening of the links. And the reason why you needed your own CloudFront is that you have to attach your own certificate with your domain, and then I leverage Lambda at the edge. And if you don't know that, it means that in every main AWS region, your code gets deployed. So when I go to that short link, it then takes me to the main AWS region. It then hits that Lambda function. That Lambda function looks up the long URL for that short URL in this DynamoDB table. It brings it back, and then it's sent back to CloudFront, and then you are redirected. So this CloudFront Lambda at the edge, that's basically the core of this product. But you need to track how many times people click on this. And I got stuck on here a lot as well, like lots of redesigns, Kinesis, SQSs, and all kinds of stuff. But I didn't want to manage that myself. And again, I looked at pricing and I got stuck on that because at high volumes, it wasn't very, very economical, but I shouldn't have. But anyways, like what I settled on was leveraging CloudFront's log that gets shipped to this S3 bucket, just because they already batch it. I think it was for every X amount of megabytes, let's say 100 megabytes, or in every 5 megabytes of logs, then they would send it to this bucket. And when it lands there, I would extract it, process it through this Lambda, but only through this queue as well, because I wanted to protect myself there. And it stores this data into the DynamoDB tables that it needs to. Something that I did there was that between the main link table and then this global table, I always wrote in with the transaction. So I stored as little as possible data on this global table, because the data that you store on an AWS DynamoDB global table will be will be replicated everywhere. And you should also consider like how much data you are going to replicate, because you are going to pay for that. So in that table, there was only like 2 or 3 columns, but the actual link object had a lot of columns. So whenever I needed to update that link, I would update it in that main table, and then with the transaction, make sure that it also updates it in that global config table. And like that way, I knew that both of them will always be in sync. And metrics that was processed by this aggregated Lambda function, like they would just always go into this link table. And the reason for that was because I think I did have some Lambda streams here or something, but then there was no Lambda stream on this, because back then you can choose or like decide which of the items you want to send into your stream. So I didn't want to let my streams fire for every little new metric that I put in there. So I think I basically went through this: the CloudFront, S3 bucket collecting queue, multiple DynamoDB tables. And the design for the table for that links was actually very simple. But as you can see on this left, like we had lots of GSIs, because we had to look up the links for the client, for the user, the campaign, the tags. I went kind of all out on here, but all in all, it was like 7 GSIs, and some of them have even been overloaded as well. So what I mean by that is like you would have tag, and then client ID, and then tag name. So if you are very smart about your DynamoDB design, you can use one type of overload, and then depending on how you query it with the begins with, you can select everything for this client or everything for this client with this tag name. It's just a smart way of getting around about a problem, but again, overcomplicating things. If I just use RDS, I mean, I could have saved myself like so much hours. And before I continue, I would like to ask if there's any questions on this. I'm pretty sure there will be, but there's just one more slide or 2 slides left. Let's see, are you still planning on contributing to this for the side also? No, I'm done with this. I learned a lot from it. I'm actually like that ping thing is still going off. I need to stop it. Actually, my biggest expense there is the CloudWatch dashboards, if you believe it or not, because there's a few of those, and there's a few like lots of metrics that I'm tracking and alarms, but I still need to shove it all off. I think we should just share the YouTube channel. All right, no questions. All right. So you might have seen that I said that I have something to also share, and I would like to introduce my next side also. It's called CloudLance, and what this is, it is a single pane of glass for all your AWS credentials and your Bastion host. I kind of feel like Werner Vogel say, like, I'd like to introduce and then pause, and then we need to play something in the background. But it looks like this. It's like you can find it on cloudlance.dev. It's a desktop application that you can install, and when it comes to the AWS functionality, it's basically just a GUI over all, or like on top of your, like for your AWS credential files. It just makes everything like managing multiple accounts much easier. It caters for MFA and for SSO, and especially if you have lots of AWS accounts. Like have a look over there, but like I said, it's like a GUI for your AWS files. Like there's deep integration with Firefox containers. So if you click on one of these bookmarks or AWS accounts, it opens it in that AWS account container, and then all the cookies is contained in there. So within one browser, you can log into multiple AWS accounts at the same time. Like we support IAM roles, users, SSO, and of course MFA is supported. You can like right click on these profiles and then say copy copy the credentials to your clipboard, and then you can use it in your terminal. You can have bookmarks, so then you can do like one-click integration into your CloudWatch dashboard, for example, or into the ECS service that you always go to. So this is just something that's very nice if you, for example, have to look at 10 different dashboards in the morning when you get up. And there's also some Bastion integration. So I had to manage a lot of bastions and port forwarding and keep track of which clients are using which local ports. And for that, I made like a Bastion section in that product. For example, on this page, like that systemic stage 1 is now active. So it's using those 2 ports, and you can clearly see it. So it means you can't use that GlobalX one that also wants to use those local ports. And then there's some built-in Git stuff. So you can work across teams. So all of this you can then save and then push it up to the cloud. And there's some built-in functionality. So it's just a push of a button. And you can, for example, then share these Bastion configurations and AWS configurations. You can share it with your team very easily. And that's it. So in closing, did WarpURL fail? And technically the answer is yes, but also no. The skills that I gained there were invaluable. Like they say, there's no compression algorithm for experience, but honestly, like the amount of experience that I gained from this was considerable. I would definitely recommend it for anybody that wants a next challenge. And maybe you're successful, maybe you're not, but I'm gonna guarantee you that at the end of this, you would have learned a ton. But it's not easy, right? So there are going to be long hours, you are going to struggle, but that should be part of the journey and you will learn something. If you do this, just launch at some point. Don't take a year and a half or 2 years like I did. Just launch. Don't do things that scale. Get your goal as fast as possible. Be realistic with your time and goals. And something that's also important, don't let this interfere with your day job. Because some employers think as soon as they hear that their employees are doing something extra or something outside of their 9 to 5, that it's going to interfere with their day job, but it doesn't have to. So that project that I did, it might have, but the idea that I had there is that I wanted it to be deployed inside the client's AWS account and then they manage it, but that didn't pan out. So I would probably have supported that. And if they if something goes wrong there, then I need to jump and support it and fix it, because it's probably mission critical for the short links to go to or to change into long URLs. But for this desktop app, for example, there isn't lots of support around that. It's going to work in the desktop. It's going to work regardless if there is a server or not. So keep that in mind, because you would have to support this. And you still have to keep your day job and be happy with everything, right? Building in public, I did speak about that. And in closing, go check out Cloud Launch, please. And I'm very open for feedback and to hear what you think about it. And that's it. Any questions? We'll be going to the Q&A soon, but questions first. Or is everyone all out of questions? That's great. Glad. Let us then look at, see what screen shared. Do I see a hand? No, see a hand. Can go.
How's it, Rehan? Are we going to have a Q&A session after this, right?
No, this is the Q&A session now.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just maybe a question around, the whole just serverless, versus, you know, your like traditional, I'd say, you know, way of doing things. And also regarding like, you know, setting up, you know, dev environments and etc. How would you say, well, like, I know your preference is probably like serverless, since you also at Swipe, but nonetheless, are there any, what are the big advantages apart from, you know, the fact that, you know, on the cloud, you don't have to provision stuff, you know, it scales as you go. What from someone who's just like maybe very much exposed to, you know, the traditional way of doing things, would you say it's the future, serverless is the future, or depending on maybe the languages that you use?
I would say, look, there's definitely still a place for apps that runs on servers, but you have to think about like what do you want to achieve with this. So most of the time, it's to have it is to have high availability and reliability as well. So you would put this server-based app inside a Docker and then behind a load balancer, and then have these auto scale with something like ECS. But the way that I prefer to do it is like always with serverless, if I can, like the serverless first approach. And benefits that you get there is just that you don't have to manage and care about what your code runs on. You just have to write your business logic and like your business code, you deploy it, and then it works. But it doesn't work in every scenario that you might want it to. So maybe some scenarios for like long-running tasks, like you can't have a Lambda function that runs longer than 15 minutes. So there you would have to be smart with your serverless technologies, and then do that step function, for example, and like break that down into smaller tasks. So there's a whole different mindset behind this. But the benefit that you get from this is just that things scale, and like you don't have to maintain all of this infrastructure.
Okay, got you. Then maybe just a follow-up. So like maybe just in terms of you maintaining your code base and how you, I mean, if it's Lambda functions, like I'm just thinking about local development, you know, do you hook up to the cloud, or is there like a local, maybe like you've got a VM that's got all the like services that you would need, like locally, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. Like it's a very important question that that people blog about a lot. So there's different ways to tackle this. There's something called AWS Local Stack, which is an open source GitHub project that you can download, and it simulates lots of the AWS parts, like the Lambda system, maybe DynamoDB and S3. But I wouldn't recommend coding against that, or like writing tests, against that. Like what I do is I would just do unit tests where I would write my Lambda function, and then but before I do that, like I would deploy the physical S3 bucket, DynamoDB, and like whatever resources I need. And then this Lambda function will test against these actual resources, but they need to be in place first. So I test against actual AWS resources, and then do like a unit test on that function. And after I've deployed, I would do like an API call to actually test that the whole thing is working. So then it tastes like it's like an end-to-end test to make sure that the permission on the API is right, like that Lambda does exist and everything is found. So first do this unit test, then an end-to-end test. If it isn't an API, then I would do the SQS call to put a message, for example, or to like read a message as well. But it does get a lot more complicated as soon as you kind of go this route.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, because I mean, I'm thinking if you're a team of like 10, 20 developers, that will probably mean that you'll, you know, if you've got the services in the cloud, then you'll, you know, you might bump into each other at some point, you know, well, that's if you're using the same services, you know, unless you obviously provision that each developer has got their own sort of, you know, cloud type environment. Yeah. Okay.
That's actually what people do. Like they would create these sandboxes for each developer lots of times. But if you have something that costs a lot of money, like RDS, you can't have one RDS for every developer, or maybe you can, but most of the times they would like share a database, and then each developer would create their feature branch and then only get the Lambda functions, but they all share this same database, and then the developers must just coordinate and make sure that they don't step on each other's toes. That's what I usually do in our environments.
Okay, got you. Thanks so much.